Hi, and welcome to Section 2, Selecting a Single Element. In this section, we will start off with introducing selection and selecting single element and multiple elements. Then, we would move on to iterating through a selection and performing subselection. Later, we would see function chaining and manipulating raw selection. Now, we move on to the first video of this section that deals with introducing selection. In this video, we'll take a look at CSS3 Selector Basics, how D3's Selection API works, and some of its powerful features. Selector support is standardized by W3C, so all modern web browsers have built-in support for the Selector API. However, the basic W3C Selector API has limitations when it comes to web development, especially in the data visualization realm. The standard W3C Selector API provides only the selector, but not the selection. What this means is that the Selector API helps you to select elements in your document. However, to manipulate the selected elements, you still need to loop through each element. Consider this code using the standard Selector API. The code essentially selects all P elements in the document, and then iterates through each element to perform some task. This can obviously get tedious quickly, especially when you have to manipulate many different elements on the page constantly, which is what we usually do in data visualization projects. This is why D3 introduced its own selection API, making development less of a chore. Before we dive into D3's selection API, some basic introduction on the W3C Level 3 selector. API is required. D3 Selection API is built based on the Level 3 selector, or is more commonly known as CSS3 selector support. We plan to go through some of the most common CSS3 selector syntaxes that are required to understand the D3 Selection API. Here are some of the most common CSS3 selector conventions you will typically encounter in a data visualization project. Hashtag foo selects elements with foo as the value of ID. Foo selects element foo. .foo selects elements with foo as the value of class. Foo goo selects the goo element inside the foo element. Foo hash goo selects the foo element with goo as the value of ID. Foo.goo selects the foo element with goo as the value of class. Foo first child selects the first child of the foo elements. Foo nth child selects the nth child of the foo elements. N is 1-based, starting at 1 for the first child. Here, we've only listed some of the most common selectors that you will need to understand and that you need to be effective when working with D3. For more information on this topic, please visit the W3C Level 3 Selector API document at w3.org. If you're targeting an older browser that does not support Selector natively, you can include Sizzle before D3 for backward compatibility. You can find Sizzle at sizzlejs.com. Currently, the next generation Selector API Level 4 is in the draft stage with W3C. You can have a peek at what it has to offer and its current draft at this link. Major browser vendors have already started implementing some of the Level 4 selectors. If you're interested to find out the level of support in your browser, try out this handy website, css4-selectors.com. Cool! In this video, we got introduced to selection in D3.